denigrating the authority of the New Testament. They're not just disagreeing with Paul when they say what they're about to say. I want you to see what they say here, everybody. This is a very fascinating thing, too, because here you have biblical authority being replaced by something else, which is essentially the authority of the group itself.
Herod Agrippa was told by Paul that Paul wanted him to not be in chains and that Paul wanted him to be saved.
What does that have to do with it?
Because Herod is an Edomite, and you believe white folks are Edomites, correct?
Do you know Agrippa used to be at the temple every Sabbath? Did you know that?
What about it?
So
Paul said he wanted him to be just like himself. Paul said he wanted Agrippa to be like him.
When did Paul's will become God's will?
Agrippa asked him if he would make him a Christian.
Paul juxtaposes his will from God's will in Romans 9. Go ahead.
Paul would not deceive a bunch of people in the room with Agrippa by saying that he wanted all of them to be just like him after Agrippa asked him if he wanted him to be a Christian. You're making Paul the author of confusion.
Okay.
Is Paul the author of confusion?
Yes, he is.
No.
Yes.
No. You're making Paul the author of confusion.
Okay.
Is Paul the author of confusion?
Yes, he is.
No.
Yes.
No.
Yes, he is.
God is not the author of confusion, and God inspired Paul.
Okay.
Is Paul the author of confusion?
Yes, he is.
No.
Yes.
All the praises and the honor goes to Yahweh Bahashem, Yahweh Shai Bahashem, Recha Ha Quadash, and double honors to the elder apostles and elder bishops of Great Millstone. Honors as well to you, brethren. Shalom to you, few sisters, and shalom to the hopefully elect. Peace to you. I want to touch on this, go into this video that was posted on Vocab Malone's page about the SICARII Israelites, where this priest, Eleazar of the SICARII, says that Paul was the author of confusion. And this does kind of happen when you don't want to do the legwork and really go into the understanding of what certain things mean, such as the Agrippa. It's hard for them to stand on that. This also happens when you get into different debates and then you kind of get twisted into following other form of doctrines, right? Because there's a lot of doctrines that says Paul was the author of confusion. Letters of Paul's wasn't authentic, but then SICARII says some of them are authentic. So this is bringing, and this is why this Christian said the Lord is not an author of confusion. And Paul would be an author of confusion to some, because the letters of Paul is hard to be understood, right? So let's get a scripture real quick before we get started and we dive into this lesson. The more we go into Agrippa, the more we start understanding things as we go on. Let's go to Romans 1:1. Okay, it says, Paul, a servant of Yahweh Shai, says Jesus Christ, called to be an apostle, separated unto the gospel, right? Separate, like holy, of Yahweh. Separated unto the gospel of Yahweh. So this is serious words here. But to say that Paul, every words of the letter of Paul was not authenticated is because, as they say, you lack hermeneutics. Which hermeneutics just goes to the study of methodology. Okay, methodological principles of interpretation of the Bible. It's just say, I don't know why they say that, but sometimes you got to sound deep when it comes to these debates, but we keep it simple. Acts 26:29, where are we at? Acts 26:29, going into Paul and Agrippa. We're going to try to dive into this. Be patient. I got a lot of commentary. Not all commentary is 100% foolproof, but when you get into commentary, you go to other studies and certain things, and it kind of brings it all home once you start really understanding what's going on. So it says, and Paul said, I would to God, and not only to thou, I would to the power, not only to thou, but also all that hear me this day, where both almost and altogether such as I am, accept these bonds, which goes back to chains. So you have to see what's going on at that time. So when these Christians come up with the Agrippa, the Lord try to convert Agrippa. I already know the story on Agrippa and his history on Herod Agrippa II, right? But we're going to read a little more commentary first. Okay, so it says, almost thou persuadest me to be a Christian, right? This is what it's saying in the commentary. At the cost of giving up all familiar and impressive text, it must be admitted that the Greek words cannot possibly bear the meaning which is thus put upon them. The word is literally, in with a little thou persuadest me. And so you can see how it's always little spins and words that say things, and it's not exactly what it's saying. It says, and this may be complexed by with little speech, with the labor of little evidence. So it says, see Ephesians 3:3, we'll get into that. We have precisely the same phrase rendered in the words of Agrippa's words, according to all expression, not on a half belief, but of a cynical sneer. Right? We'll go into the word cynical. Thou art trying to make me a Christian of me with very few words on very slender grounds. Says here, so we can see that right here. I'm not going to read the rest of this, but we can see right here that Agrippa's words accordingly are expression not of half belief, but of a cynical sneer. So we're going to go to cynical. Let's see what cynical means. Having or showing the attitude or temper of cynic, contemptuously distrustful of human nature and motives. Right? So it's a distrustful phrase. It wasn't meant to be serious. Based on reflecting the belief that human conduct is motivated primarily by self-interest. Right? So we can see that even the commentators, the writers who go into this understand this was not a serious statement where he was really trying to convert, okay, Agrippa. It was like impossible. That wasn't going to happen because he knew he wasn't a Jew. And we can see here, when you go into it, I'll jump into it a little bit. When you go into it, Agrippa II was Herod Agrippa II. He wasn't like the first, right? So he was a little more playful. He was a young man, so he was a little more playful and easy to manipulate, or jokingly. He was a joker, so to speak. And this is why he made that context. Thou also persuaded me to be a Christian. So he had a snicker and a laugh about it. And Paul was using guile because he knew the Jews was after him, and he was dealing with the situation in prison. And he know what happened to the Israelites, right? So, but if you really want to go into it, you have to go study it. If you rather just say, oh, the letters of Paul was not authenticated and this or that, then of course. I mean, that's why the work says study to show thyself approved. It says, luxurious man of the world, sufficiently estranged from what is holy instantly to banish the transient impression with haughty, contemptuous mockery, the conduct of Pilate in John 18:38. Okay, thou persuadest me to be a Christian. This is another one. It says, this is sarcasm, is meant to say, thus summarily, thus brevi manu, I guess they're going into Greek, you will not manage to win me over to a Christian. Right? So when he said not only thou, he wasn't talking about Agrippa, right? And he says the original way is spelled, you see how they spunt it? Thou summarily thus, it says, you will not manage to win me over to be a Christian. Of course, they don't put the snickers and the laughs in there, right? And you see how we take it. And it says, okay, go to Ephesians 3. Let me see here. It says, that summarily you will not manage me over to be a Christian. So that's pretty much on that. Pretty much it on that. Let me go to another one. It says, I wish you were such as I am, going into what he was saying. It says, might become such as I am. Paul avoids the word Christian, which for himself he might willingly have accepted, 1 Peter 4:16, but which was used by the king in a mocking sense, and therefore would not have made his wish seem an acceptable one. You may call me a Christian in mockery. My joy and hope and faith in Yahushua are such that I know no better prayer for any than I wish you all the like blessings. So you can clearly see, what did Yahushua say? Live peaceably amongst all men. Agree with thine adversaries. All right, so this was a situation. Okay, it also says here, a bribe. It says from this it is clear, in spite of the leniency which Paul had been at first treated by Felix, that either because his case was deemed more serious in consequences of his being left in prison so long, or because he was just now before the court as a prisoner, the apostle had been put in chains. So we can clearly see, when you really go to the understanding of it, what must be clear is this wasn't the hardcore Agrippa that everybody thinks of. So it wasn't like he was dealing with his father. That was a totally different animal, right? So this is bribe, money or favor given, promised in order to influence the judgment of conduct. A person in position of trust, right? So let's read a little more on this. Let's go to Ephesians 3:3 first. It says, how that the revelation he made known unto me the mystery. Let me go up to 1. For this cause I, Paul, the prisoner of Yahushua, for you Gentiles, Israelites, if you have heard of the dispensation of the grace of Yahweh, of the power, which is given me to you upward, how that by revelation he made known unto me the mystery. Now this is precepting what these commentators are saying, right? As I wrote afore in a few words, right? Whereby when ye read, ye may understand my knowledge in the mystery of Yahushua, right? So you understand that. I'm trying to make this quick. You can Google any of this, and it'll bring it right home. So I want to go into this just a little bit. It says Herod Agrippa II was only 17 when his father Herod Agrippa I died. He was in Rome at the time. He was favored by the Emperor Claudius. Claudius kept Agrippa II in Rome for a few more years, then made him tetrarch of the Syrian kingdom called Calix, and gave him the responsibility to supervise the temple of Jerusalem. Herod Agrippa II eventually gave up the territory to the Chalcis, but was granted the title of king and given more territory, including that he had been ruled by Herod Philip Nero, later added to the territory, including some of Galilee. So it's a lot to read on this, but I'm going to read a little more and then jump down to the end. It says the godfather of the Herod clan was Herod the Great, the king when Yahushua was born, and one who tried to have him killed, Matthew 2. Herod Antipas ruled during the ministries of John the Baptist and Yahushua. He is the one who had John executed and sat in judgment at one of Yahushua's trials, Leviticus 23, 7 through 12. Herod Agrippa the first was king of Judea for a few years, and the one who had James executed, his death is recorded in Acts 12. So you can clearly see this was a different Agrippa. But the Christians will have you say, well, Agrippa is Agrippa. Nope, not the same. It's so much to read on it. You can look this up. That had nothing to do with trying to convert him to be a Christian. Let's go on. Herod Agrippa II also makes a statement to Paul. Let me see here. Yeah. No, let me go here. The sentiments expressed in the hymn are noble, and certainly the Bible warns about waiting, because today it is the day of salvation. They're going into, when he said it almost persuaded me to be a Christian and not the way, Christians take it and spin it. However, the sermons and songs are based on poor translations of what Agrippa II actually said. There is no limit, no hint in Acts 25, that Agrippa was seriously considering becoming a Christian. In fact, a more accurate translation, of which I read earlier, you got to go into the translations, of what he said gives almost an opposite impression. Even the NIV states, do you think that is such a short time you can persuade me to be a Christian? That's what's supposed to have been said. In other words, Agrippa fully understood what Paul was trying to do, and he tells Paul plainly that it is not going to happen, at least not in such a short time. You see that? He said it's not going to happen, and then he used a cynical sneer, as we said before. But he understood that he could play Agrippa a little more, a battle of wits, and of course Paul was sharper than Agrippa, and he was a young man. He didn't know what the hell he was doing, to a degree, and he shewed him favor. Remember, he knew about the practices of the Israelites. So all Paul was trying to do was use him. When a man's ways please the Lord, he make even his enemies to be at peace with thee. And that kind of just sums it up. Anyway, that's all I have on that. Shalom.